All right, just a reminder that we are recording this session. Please do stay on mute unless you want to ask a question, but it is lunchtime and you don't want your sandwich that you're eating to be part of the recording, so remember to stay on mute. And please use the chat box to say hello and enter one word to describe how you feel about autumn and fall. Lana, would you mind reading off the answers that come through?
I would not mind. Ooh, Wade says renewal. One word to describe how you feel about autumn and fall. Or we have, 10 participants, so we're waiting on 8 answers. All right, Daniela, cozy. That's a great word for autumn and fall. Rachel, anticipatory. I like that. All right, Bailey, rejuvenating. Jake says cold. Yeah, especially Tuesday. Did you hear the Tuesday conversation? Check your apps. All right. And look at that. We have 2 Baileys on one call. That is not a common name. Ready. And Valerie says colorful. Great.
Yeah. Okay.
All right.
Just would like to say a little bit about Colorado Afterschool Partnership. Colorado Afterschool Partnership is one of the 50 statewide afterschool networks. And we focus our work on 3 main areas: policy and partnership, sustainability, and quality. We create statewide, regional, and local partnerships. And we do this so we can provide trainings and resources like today's session to the after-school field. And overall mission is just to support after-school programs, out-of-school programs, summer programs, and continue with high-quality expanded learning. Today, we're pleased to partner with leadership and organizational coach Lana Hailemariam to explore how to create a healthy environment for conversations about race. Lana is with Stand Up, a Colorado-based organization that works with education, government, and nonprofit organizations to maximize their impact. Lana is familiar with the after-school field through her consultant work with summer scholars, where she helped them create equitable and socially just disciplinary policies for their program. Her other after-school specific experience has been with the YMCA, Denver Extended Learning Communities, Boys and Girls Club, and the Denver After School Alliance. So we are excited to have you. This is our final session today, Lana, and I feel so lucky to have been a part of all of them. So thank you.
Absolutely. Thank you for that introduction that makes me sound really important. That's all these things are really for, make people feel important. And so I am getting my screen ready, and I'm going to share it with all of you. As I do that, or actually, let me type this in here. Yeah. So before I do that, I'm going to just tell you, if you know anything about me, which I don't know if any of you have ever been in any of my workshops, the names aren't super familiar, but that happens sometimes. Then what you know is that my goal in being here with you today is not to fulfill a contract or check a box. My goal when I take time away from my family and those whom I love is to make connections that are impactful. And so the conversation that we're going to have today is not going to just be me talking at you. So I'm going to invite you to do a few things. And the first invitation is to go ahead and enable your video if you're able, right? I mean, if you're naked, please, keep that thing off, okay? But if you're able to be shown on video, I mean, it's lunchtime. If you're eating, oh, well, we've seen people eat before. It's totally fine. Just take your bites and keep it moving. But when it comes to conversations about race, particularly this year, right? This is a big conversation. And it requires, in order for us to have that conversation in a healthy and productive way, it requires for us to be able to connect just as human beings. And I'm trying to remove the barriers in that connection by inviting you to join me by video. Okay. So if you're all grown adults, and if it's not a good idea for you to be on video for whatever reasons, totally respect that. If you're just doing it for convenience, then I'm going to challenge you to go ahead and dial in with us. The other thing that I'm going to invite you to do is to eliminate distractions. Okay. It is very likely that because we're all home, we already know where our kids are. Okay. So you may not need your cell phone right at your side. They know where you are. They will find you. The other thing is multitasking, right? That's not a thing. The truth is that the minute you go do something else, you have now left our conversation. And we only have like a really short time together to have a really giant conversation. And so I'm going to just invite you to, try to be really present with us by eliminating whatever distractions might be present for you. Okay. So if you are on board with at least half of what I just said, go ahead and give me a thumbs up. You can hit the reactions button so that I know that you're there, particularly if I can't see you. Thank you to Bailey, Jake, Rachel. I saw you. I'm going to have to say Bailey S and Bailey D. Oh, there is no name here for you. Okay, I am going to, I see Michelle, Wade, and two of you don't have a name showing. So I'm going to ask you to go ahead and, if you know how to rename yourself. So if you're looking at your own video, you're going to put your mouse on your video to those three dots. And there should be a rename option, and go ahead and type whatever name you want for me. This is also a time where I invite you to add pronouns that you would like for me to honor. Okay, so you can go ahead and do that at this time. But there are two people that I don't see your name, so that's okay. We'll get you involved and I'll find out your name. All right, let's see what's going on in this chat. Okay, you got it, Megan. Okay, good. Because I can't multitask. Okay, so I'm going to share my screen and we're going to just jump right in. Nope. Okay, let's try this again. Okay. Can everyone see my little PowerPoint there with the green slide? Okay. And you can just see one green slide right now, right? Okay. Lovely. We are in business. Okay. So the thing that I'm really grateful that I have these two monitors, because I keep all of your faces up. If you can put us in gallery view when we're all talking, that would probably serve us best, right? If you're old enough to remember the Brady Bunch style. And then, and then when I'm talking, it's up to you if you want to see me or not. So the first thing is I'm inviting you to a conversation that I take really seriously because it's just so personal for all of us, right? It doesn't matter if you are, because the conversation right now is kind of like Black people or people of color, and then white people, right? But it doesn't matter who you are. The conversation about race is still deeply personal, right? And so before we get to getting into that conversation, I'm just going to tell you a little bit about myself. All right. The first thing is that I'm not from here originally. I was not born and raised here. I was born and raised in the DMV. Who knows the DMV? Who can type that into the chat? Tell me what the DMV is or where that is. Nobody's typing. Okay, I'm going to give it a couple more seconds because there's a little delay sometimes. Any guesses? Okay, so this is why it's helpful to have video, because I can see you all doing nothing to type. So I'm just going to jump right in. No judgment. It's the DC, Maryland, Virginia. Okay. So if you're from that area or anywhere on the East Coast, that would have immediately come to your mind. If you're from like the Midwest or more West than that, then probably you're thinking of the place where you get your license. That's not it. I was not born there. And so I came here just 4 years ago. But before I moved here, I grew up in a really diverse area, right? I mean, the nickname for Washington, D.C. is Chocolate City. So that should tell you something right there. Just, being in school, being in work environments, walking on the street, there was no shortage of a variety of people. It's just normal, where I'm from. And so then I moved out here and everything turned vanilla. And it was really different. I'm not going to say different good or different bad because I love Denver. I quite enjoy my time out here and the people that I've met. It's just different. Now, one different thing. Oh, you're from Nova. Hey, Bailey S. Yeah, we're gonna have to work on your nicknames for home. Okay. One thing about home is that if you're from Nova, you might know this, that there's an area where I lived and then I got married. I got married really young at 23. And when we got married, we decided, well, we're going to move to Howard County. Well, Howard County, I would liken it to maybe Douglas County out here, kind of like, except way less white. Okay. And so it's the place where all the money is. And so therefore all the schools are funded well. Does that make sense? Like that, whatever that town is out here. And so everyone, you move to Howard County to have a family, to get good schools and stuff like that. And so that's what we did. We had no kids, we're like, we get married, we can move out here and then we get the kid thing and the family thing's coming. And so we moved to this apartment complex called Poplar Glen. Poplar Glen Apartments. I'll never forget it. We had a dog and my husband, he was my husband at the time. He is Ethiopian, but doesn't look it. Like his own people are like, they need convincing. He has to actually speak in his native language to convince them that he is actually Ethiopian. I look more Ethiopian than he does. And so he is, I'm going to describe him. He is a stocky guy. He was a personal trainer. He's like one of those gym looking, dudes. And he had bald head and he's really dark, with dark skin. And so we moved out there and all of a sudden there started to be a trend. Every time he would go to work, probably 2 to 3 times a week, he would come home with a story of how he was pulled over and or a ticket, usually a ticket too. I mean, to the point where we were getting hundreds of dollars of tickets weekly. And it became a home conversation. And so the conversation would go something like this. I can't stand these police officers out here. I'm so tired of getting pulled over. To which I would respond, well, what did you do? Well, I mean, they said I was speeding, but I wasn't going any faster than anyone else. Well, I mean, if it says 30 and you're going 37, then you're speeding. And it doesn't matter if everyone else is speeding. Like, then you get pulled over. So, well, no, it's just like they're singling me out. It's like I always get pulled over. It's like nobody else is getting pulled over. Well, other people get tickets. That doesn't even sound real. Can you just slow down maybe? If you weren't breaking the law, then you wouldn't get pulled over. And so that's how these conversations went. Okay. I am going to pause right there and give you a little bit of background on Howard County. Howard County, remember I said it was less white, right? The whole county is one thing, but the actual town where we lived in was called Columbia. And Columbia, Maryland was a planned community. The community was planned with interracial couples in mind. So the idea was that if you lived in like Baltimore or DC back when it was being planned, it may not have been safe for you as an interracial couple to be so out and open. And so they planned this community specifically to welcome interracial couples. And honestly, I think still even today, it's probably one of the most diverse communities I have ever seen. And you see more interracial couples than and everything. Usually when you think interracial, if all you know is white and black, then that's what you tend to think of. But it's seriously like Indian and Pakistani and West African and, Asian, some type of Asian country or something like it's just, you see all the mixes, all the children. I mean, it's just a beautiful place for me to reflect on. And so when we moved there, we felt like it would be safe, that we just blend right in. Also, you may have heard, I don't know, maybe Denver doesn't care what's going on in the East Coast, but Howard County has hit the lists several times in a row for wealthiest counties in the country, in the entire country. So there's a lot of money in this county. Based on my conversation with my husband at the time, and based on whatever he was experiencing. Now we're going to just kind of tap into your listening skills. My question for you is, what did you notice? What did you hear? What did you see or imagine as I was telling the story? What do you think and what do you feel? You don't have to tackle all the questions all at once, but my invitation is to go ahead and type into the chat, pick maybe a question or two, and write out a complete thought about how you responded, reacted, how you experienced the story that I told you. So now everybody's typing something. Just pick a question or maybe two. Okay, Bailey S. says she felt fear for him. Okay. I can see a lot of you are still typing, so I'm being patient. We have to be patient with each other, you know. Okay, Bailey D. I felt frustration from the perspective of both you and your husband felt a lack of understanding. Interesting perspective. Okay. Who else? We're still waiting on participation from Jake, Daniela, Wade, Michelle, Valerie, Rachel. No, Rachel. Yeah, Rachel. Thought I saw your name. Sorry. And just pick a question, any question, and go ahead and give it a go. Thanks, Jake. I'm going to go ahead and read that out. Initially, I was picturing a white cop pulling him over every time, not knowing the information about the diversity of the city and community definitely set a picture in my mind. Okay, that's interesting, right? How we visualize based on our experiences and what we know. Thank you for sharing that. Valerie says, I thought about a time when a group of us in college were pulled over and ticketed for speeding when everyone else was speeding. Okay, that is so annoying. Let's see, Michelle. I thought the cost of all those tickets must have been a strain and the frustration that he felt. Absolutely, that got old very quickly, paying tickets. Daniela says he was being singled out because of the community he was in. Absolutely, maybe. Who knows? I am going to go scroll up here to Bailey, is it Dutco? And invite you to unmute yourself. Tell me about what you wrote. You felt frustration from the perspective of both you and your husband, felt a lack of understanding. What's that mean?
I think for that, it's just like both sides were frustrated. Obviously, I would be frustrated in your position getting tickets that were having to be paid and not having any control over when they were being received or why they were being received. And then also expecting that your husband was probably frustrated around why he was being given the tickets when he felt like it was unfairly given to him and not maybe not feeling the same, like just being on two separate pages, but both being equally frustrated. Does that make sense?
Absolutely. That makes perfect sense. Thank you so much for clarifying that. Yeah. So this idea of both sides being frustrated and from two different perspectives, like for maybe two different sets of reasons. Yeah. Okay. All right. So Jake, tell me about this picture that you had and how that got challenged when I gave you a little more information.
I guess it's just sort of a societal, I'm trying to think of the right word, stereotype, I guess, that's been kind of pre-ingrained into my head, at least, I guess, not necessarily intentionally. It's just kind of an unconscious, like an unconscious reaction. You just kind of, I picture most cops being white, and I have, we've all heard the stories of people being targeted because of their color when being pulled over. And so that's just kind of what was going on in my head.
Yeah. And so that makes perfect sense, especially this year, right? Who knows what you would have typed in 2019. But in 2020, it totally makes sense that that would be your visual. And I will also clarify that Every time that I remember hearing him complain, it was a white police officer. That doesn't mean that he wasn't pulled over by a black police officer, but the conversations we were having were regarding white police officers. So that's all I can say about that. All right. So here's another thought. Oh, here we go. Wade, thanks for chiming in. The perception of what is fact and what is not. Okay. To truly know if you're the only one being pulled over or pulled over more than others, one needs to consider how many are pulled over in an area through time. Absolutely. Absolutely. And he didn't have a regular, traditional job schedule, right? So some of us are on the road, same time, same roads every day. That wasn't his, it was different. It was the same road because it's the road you get to access the highway, but it was different times of the day and different days of the week and things like that. We didn't necessarily, I remember trying to think of patterns. What are your thoughts initially about my reaction to his complaining? What are your thoughts about my reaction to his complaining? Anybody want to either type that into the chat, or I can also invite you to unmute yourself because we have a nice cozy little group so we can actually talk more. I'm going to ask Daniela, do you mind if I pick on you right now? What are your thoughts about my initial response to him?
That he was maybe not taking responsibility for his actions, and if it was more like if you're getting pulled over, it's for a reason, like you must have done something.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. And so this goes back to that conversation about race. And for people who do not experience the thing, right? For someone to actually say how they're feeling and then have it rationalized, how might that feel? Whether it's fact or not, he was saying how he felt, right? Silencing. Wow, that's a powerful word, Rachel. Dead on. Absolutely. Disregarded, another strong one. Yeah. Asking follow-up questions about why he was getting tickets rather than going into his feelings about why he was getting pulled over. Ding, ding, ding. Yes, Rachel, yes. That's exactly what I did. All right. Next one. Are you ready to hear more about me and my life? Oh, it's so exciting. I've got another story for you all that I'm going to tell. And I'm going to tell you a couple of stories during the time that we're together. Each time I tell it, I'm going to put up these same questions. And actually, my intention was to take that down when we were talking, take the questions down when we were talking. So if somebody could remind me next time, because I tend to forget that the screen is still up. But now you didn't, when I was telling the story before, you didn't know what you were looking or listening for. Now you know. These are the same questions every time, okay? And so when you're listening, just listen powerfully for those types of things. Also, as you're listening, check in. Who was that? That was Jake. Check in with what is coming up for you personally and how you are personally feeling listening to the story. Got it? All right. So here's the deal. We eventually moved from that apartment and we bought a house. Yay. Because, we're living the dream. Get married, buy a house, have the kid. We're doing things in proper order. And we end up, I think we were going to some event or something. I doubt we were going on a date because that stuff had already fallen off at that point in the marriage. But perhaps we were going to some event. And I remember that we were both dressed kind of up a little bit to go out. And there is a road called Route 1. And it stretches from DC to Baltimore. Okay. Now to drive from DC to Baltimore on the highway takes about 30, 40 minutes longer with traffic. But to drive from DC to Baltimore on Route 1 will take you no less than 2 hours. It's just full of stoplights and that's not the way you're going to go. And so we were heading south on Route 1 and I forgot something. I was driving. He's in the passenger seat. Route 1 has 2 lanes going south and 2 lanes going north. In between is a double solid yellow line. Okay. So it's late at night. There's no cars on the road. I had to make a decision. Am I going to turn right and then U-turn come back out, stop, look north, look south, turn left. No, nobody's on the road. I'm just going to do this quick U-ey right in the middle of the road, and everyone will be fine, and we'll save at least 5 minutes in so doing. And so I did that. And I went over that double solid yellow line, and, we were heading back up north so that we could get back to the house and get whatever it is that we forgot. And I think I didn't even get to the traffic light, and I heard that boop, boop, and I saw the lights behind me, and I was like, oh, come on. Because I knew what I just did. I just didn't know where he came from. This guy did a very thorough scan, and there were no police. I was very upset. So I couldn't pull over right then. So I just put my hazards on to let him know I see him. And then when we turned onto another street, I ended up pulling off onto the shoulder. The police as soon as I pulled over, I knew what they wanted, right? What do the police always want? License, registration. So I'm like, open up the glove box. Let me get my registration out. Where's my purse? Let me get my license out. And the officer comes to the car. And it was a white male police officer. And he says, may I have your license and registration, please? Yep, here you go. He's like, do you know why? Yep, I already know why. Yeah, I didn't see you back there. And I didn't want to do this, all this 3-point turning on the side. And I just thought it was going to be really quick. And there were no cars on the road. I did look, officer. There were no cars on the road. It was totally safe if it wasn't illegal. And he was like, okay. So he goes to his police car so they can sit there and do whatever the police do in their cars while we're nervously waiting and having somewhere else to go. And I look over to my right, and my husband is frozen. His hands are on the dashboard, and he's perfectly still. And he's freaking out. Why did you do that? Why'd I do what? You're just doing too much. You're moving too much, and you're talking too much. Why are you doing all of that? You should have waited till he got to the car to get all that stuff out. Get what stuff out? My license and my registration? I already knew he was going to ask for that. This is can you just be quiet? Can you just be quiet when he comes back? Just be quiet and be still. And don't do anything until he tells you to do something. Like, dude, that is a lot over there. He comes back and he gives me, I don't remember, was it a ticket or a warning? Probably a warning. And I didn't get a lot of tickets back then, And so he gives me this warning, and I say a couple more things. We joke, and he tells me, don't do that again. Be safe getting home and be careful out there. Thanks, officer. All right, we're off to the races. Back to my original questions. I'm going to share my screen, and you're going to start typing. You can pick, do you see my screen? Okay. You can pick any of the questions that you want to tackle and just type it into the chat. Try to wait for, we got 8 of us, wait for maybe at least 6 responses, because I think some people are maybe doing something else. Okay, so Daniela shares, there was a difference on how he reacts to police officers and how you react to police officers. What is safe and unsafe? Wow, great observation. Thanks for sharing that. Rachel, based on your reactions to being pulled over, you and your husband have drastically different views of your safety around law enforcement. Bailey S., husband was scared. Yeah. Valerie, I noticed the difference in your reaction to the officer and your husband. Yes, W-U-Z next time, okay? All right. Let me see, is somebody else typing? I feel like a couple of you are still typing. I was surprised that you didn't do the same protocol that your husband did. Yeah. Thank you for sharing that, Michelle. This is a great time to pause and say this. I am just naturally kind of an open oversharey type of person. And when I go into environments like this, I don't show up as a completely different person. I just show up as myself. That said, to have these conversations, we got to declare this Zoom a safe place, right? Because what doesn't serve us or the young people that we work with or the parents that we work with is to pretend and dance around the conversation. And so I really appreciate all of your courage and just being honest and typing through what you think and what landed on you and what you honestly thought. That's how these conversations happen. Bailey says, thought about how would the situation have been different if your husband had been driving? Would he have even made the U-turn? That is a great question. That is a powerful wondering. I think I might ask him. So now let's unpack this just a little bit. And I'm going to chat with you, Michelle, because I'm interested in your thoughts. So go ahead and unmute yourself. You say, I was surprised that you didn't do the same protocol that your husband did. Tell me about that.
I have a lot of friends that when they are teaching their children to drive, it's the first thing that they have told me that they teach their children. And to be honest, that has never been something I have thought that my daughter's only 14, but I'm already envisioning her driving and we talk about things. And that was never something that I was taught, being a white girl learning how to drive. And that would not be something that I would think would be my first thought of teaching her. But the majority of my friends who Black, brown, that is the very first thing that they teach their children when they're learning how to drive. So I was just surprised that that wasn't your reaction too, just because I've heard that more and more, that is the first thing that a parent is teaching their kiddos.
For sure. What I'm hearing you saying is that as a parent, what we are teaching our children is based on our own life experience. And
Yes.
if I don't have that experience, then I can't teach that to my child.
Yes.
Right. And so that makes sense. Right. It doesn't mean, and I'm going to say a lot of things and we're going to talk about a lot of things. It doesn't mean that we have to assign judgment to those things. There is no right or wrong all the time. Right. We don't have to have a box to put everything in. Some things just are. Okay. That's one of them. Thank you so much for helping me to unpack that a little bit. One more. Wade says, great example of two ways to approach a situation, one being positive and the other expecting malintent. Wonder if the way we act affects the outcome. Talk to me about that, Wade. I'm very interested about your wondering there.
Well, I kind of base a lot of what I think of as far as social interaction with, I'm a horse trainer, have been by trade, and how you treat a horse. I feel like, and I know that people are different than horses, but bear with me if you will, in the sense that when I train a horse that absolutely knows nothing about riding or halter broke or anything, as far as being handled by its owner or a human or a person, then the way you approach that horse and the way that you set that horse up through the way you act is very important for the outcomes that you get from the animal. And I think in a very basic way, there's some similarities on how we were talking about how we train our sons and daughters how to drive and to act in a situation, in this instance, being pulled over by law enforcement, and expecting to act a certain way because if you don't, you're going to get in more trouble. Right. And we're just talking about getting ticketed or a warning. The difference between the two that's all I'm talking about. When I think about that, as far as training a horse, when I'm training a horse to just something simple, it doesn't matter what it is, say become halter broke, so it will lead on a halter. It's kind of the same way. If I approach it in a more positive, calm manner, much like what it sounds like you did when that officer approached you and your ex-husband, then think the outcome is always more positive. And chances are you're going to get the warning instead of the ticket. Not all the time, but chances, right? There's always a gamble in that. So I just think about it that way as we interact as a society, or as we interact as individuals with one another. If anybody approaches me and they're in my, just their stance and their body language alone can affect the outcome of that interaction.
Absolutely.
And I think that if you're expecting malintent or trouble or somebody to do you wrong, then even if that doesn't happen, your perception of that instance will be that someone did you wrong because you've set yourself up for that failure.
Yeah. Everything that you just said is a valid perspective, right? There are so many sides to a story. There are so many ways to look at it. There's so many ways to experience it, right? And so when Wade says, here's how I'm seeing this situation, what did Wade use? A personal life example. Well, here's how I work with horses, and here's what's true there. And you draw from that and you apply it to whatever it is you're looking at in that moment. And wouldn't it be beautiful if we all had the exact same things to draw from? We'd all just agree all the time and see everything the same way. And yet, some people would say that's not so beautiful, that the beauty actually is in the fact that we all draw from different places, and that influences what we see and how we experience what's in front of us. Does that make sense? In this particular situation, what I also hear Wade bringing up is this idea of like the chicken and the egg, which came first, right? And so someone could easily say, and this goes back to the first story. Do you remember when he got pulled over repeatedly? And remember, I tell the story as though like we just moved there and this thing started happening. No, it kind of crept up over time. Like the first few times he got pulled over, it wasn't a big deal. Like we paid the tickets and that was that. But over time, it became a household conversation. Okay. So just to bring some clarity to that. In that space, one of the things that I said in the beginning of that was, well, what did you do? Right? Looking at the person. This is the same situation. Oh, well, what did you do? Well, because you act tense, then that creates a negative energy for the officer, puts them on alert, and then they treat you differently. The opposite side of that same conversation, like chicken versus egg, right, is that when the officer pulled me over, I was just as chatty the first few times. And then I had a scary situation happen, and now I am tense. Every single time. It's kind of like if you liken it to abusive situations, right? Even if you look at animals, to Wade's point, right? Like a dog that gets hit. What happens when you raise your hand? What does a dog do? Once you've learned what's coming, your brain has that information stored, and it is looking for every way to protect you. This is automatic and true for all of us. And that's likely why my experience was different. Because when I get pulled over, I can smile and, listen, in my 20s, I was young and hot. Okay. So I was always getting pulled over looking cute. And, most of the officers are men. And so I got away with a lot of stuff. Okay. I'm not going to lie. I think that worked to my advantage. And also, I was really extroverted, right? Would talk and laugh and smooth out the situation, make it calm. And so, yeah, I probably created a situation where I was just less likely to get a ticket or have something negative happen, right? It only takes that one time, though. It only takes that one time. And you have that one negative experience that perhaps you didn't contribute to. And what does our brain do? Our brain locks it in. And our brain says, that's an officer. Remember the last time with that officer? And it makes connections for us automatically. This is subconscious and we are not aware of it most times. And then we react and we respond in that way. So yes, to everything that you said. I'm going to tell you one final story. And then I'm going to tell you why I'm doing this. So my final story is actually told out of turn on purpose. This final story happened when we were still living at Poplar Glen. And you'll remember that the last story that I told, we had already bought the house and moved, right? So now between the first and the second story, you're going to put this third story in between there. This is the timing of when it happened. So I'm at Poplar Glen, and, we're newlyweds. We still like each other. And so we're texting and talking and everything every day, right? And all throughout the day. And I remember around, what time was it? Probably around 2:00-ish in the day, I just stopped hearing from my husband. Just nothing. Just kind of went radio silent. And I was like, that's odd. I'm like, well, maybe he's busy. Maybe his phone died. Things could happen. And so I let a couple hours go by and wasn't too concerned. Then I started to reach out to some friends. Hey, Jesse, when's the last time you talked to Masai? That's his name. And hey, Tony, when's the last time you talked to him? And everyone was saying times that were way before 2:00. And so at this point, I'm starting to get concerned. I didn't want to alert his parents because I didn't want to panic, too much if it was just something small. And then when you call the police, they're like, sorry, enough time hasn't gone by, So I didn't want to overreact. Well, it got well into where the sun set, and now it was nighttime. He wasn't at work. I called that building several times. He wasn't answering any of my calls, and this was just really weird behavior. Now I'm panicking. I called the police and I told them my story. And of course they say things like, well, did you do? Which, I don't know, maybe one of them was helpful that they said. And I was like, yes, I did all those things. Well, just keep us posted. I said, can you at least just run his name to see if he's like in your system or, something happened. And they did. And he didn't come up. And so I was like, okay, I don't know if that's good or bad. I went to bed that night not knowing where my husband was. And even telling you the story right now, and Megan knows, I've told this story probably 3 times already, and every time it is fresh. I remember feeling powerless. I remember feeling terrified. I remember feeling confused, not knowing what to do. You start to think the worst. In the middle of the night, maybe like 3 or 4 in the morning, I get a phone call. I'm in and out of sleep, all night. And it's him. I'm so happy. Like, where are you? Are you okay? What's happening? He's like, I'm calling you from the police station. I'm on my way home now. I'll tell you what happened when I get there. I just wanted to call you. They wouldn't let me call you until now. At least he's alive. So he gets home, and him and his friend Rob, who, by the way, is now a lawyer, were telling this story about how they were driving in DC. They were coming up a street. It's called New York Avenue, pretty main street in DC. And they had gone through an intersection, and the police lights turned on behind them. They immediately pulled over, and the police approached the vehicle. They asked for license and registration. And according to the both of them, probably 8 seconds went by. They were instructed to unlock their doors. They did. They were both aggressively taken out of the vehicle from 2 different sides, slammed on the ground, and immediately arrested. They stayed on the ground for what seemed like, they say, an eternity. It was probably about 20 to 25 minutes. 20 to 25 minutes laying on the ground with your arms behind your back and no explanation of why this is happening. People are walking by. It's demoralizing. It's embarrassing. And it's angering. Can you imagine the anger that is simmering inside of them? They end up getting put into the back of a police car, and they were taken to the police station. They were fingerprinted, they were booked, I guess, and put into a jail cell, and then several hours later released with no explanation. You can go. Because of what happened to them, they were fearful about asking too many questions. And so they just left. That's the story. Do you need me to put the questions back up? Anybody kind of got it? Go ahead and type into the chat. What'd you notice? What'd you hear? What'd you see or imagine? What do you think? What do you feel? Oh, one detail I forgot to mention is that they were eventually told that they ran a red light. That's the reason why they were pulled over. Okay, Bailey D says, feel so many things: heartbroken, outrage, confusion. Okay. Michelle says, I felt sick to my stomach. I can only imagine how scared they must have felt, how helpless they must have been. Bailey S, I have heard similar stories and it's terrifying. Interesting. Michelle, is that also the reason why they were taken to the station for running a red light? Yeah, there were no charges. Bailey D, notice that the police didn't tell you of his arrest, even though he should have been in their system when you called. Yeah, I always wonder about that part of it, why he wasn't in the system. And it is possible that they just didn't enter the information until after I had called. So yeah, I'm not sure. It's just always a wondering I've had. Let's see, Jake, it feels like a news story that could have been from yesterday, from 2 years ago, from 2016. The kind of story that doesn't ever get resolution for anyone. This also provides a lot of context for how your husband reacts in situations like this and gives me some potential context into what Rob is probably fighting for as a lawyer. Yeah, that's insightful, Jake. We'll go back to that. Valerie, I can't even begin to imagine how all of you were feeling. My heart just ached as you shared this terrible event. Okay. Couple more folks want to hear from here. Let's see. Daniela, did you respond? Still thinking? Okay, take your time. Wade, did you respond? Okay, good. So one thing that, here we go. I understand why your husband reacted the way he did in the U-turn story. That was so emotionally abusive. Yeah. So Jake and Rachel both kind of alluded back to that story that I intentionally told out of turn. Now we can see why he showed up the way that he did in that situation. And we can also see why I didn't. That's not my story to tell. It's often tricky with the Black community, for example, because there is this giant cause that we as a community are moving toward, just as the Latino community is moving toward things, and just as the indigenous communities are moving toward things, right? Every group has a cause, you can say. And yet, even though I identify as a Black woman, even though I'm a part of the Black community, I don't share everyone's individual experience. Just because I'm Black doesn't mean that I've had negative interactions with police officers. Just because I'm Black doesn't mean that I know what it's like to grow up in a poor neighborhood. Just because I'm Black, it doesn't mean that I am a part of the government systems, support systems. Just because I'm Black, it doesn't mean that I'm not at a, high paid position or not, having a different political belief. Those details don't matter though. I don't have to share in your experience to respect it, to honor it, to validate it. I go back to someone asked on a previous one about that first time when he was getting pulled over. And I said, well, what did you do? And I forget what the question is that they asked, but it was like, how do you feel about how you showed up in that conversation today? I regret it. I do. At the time, I was working with what I had. That's the extent of knowledge I had. I'm a little bit more emotionally intelligent at 42 than I was at 20 something, And so I understand why I showed up the way I did. I don't beat myself up about it, but I do wish that I had been more present and a better support for my husband at that time. There's definitely a lot of opportunities. Let's see, Daniela, here you are. Basic rights were violated. It gives insight about your husband and how he was affected by his past experiences. Yeah, that's exactly what we're talking about. Where is the wisdom of a population that is supposed to be the smartest on the planet? When we treat each other in such ways, we unfortunately show our weaknesses and ignorance as a species on this planet. Absolutely. And here's the other thing. The story that I don't have is the story of the officers. That's a whole nother perspective that we will just never know or understand. In this moment, why am I telling you stories about my life when we're supposed to be here talking about how to talk about race with youth? One opportunity is that how you talk about race with youth is no different than how you talk about it with adults. Young people have thoughts, they have brains, they have feelings, and they have their own experiences. And the mastermind plan to kind of what Wade is saying is each person has an experience. Just because I don't have that experience doesn't make yours invalid. Each person has an experience. And just because I have not had your experience does not make yours invalid. If my logic in showing up to the conversation with my husband is, well, I don't get pulled over, so clearly you're doing something wrong, then how must he feel? I mean, think about it. Let's take it to something really simple. How about those mountain climbing walls? We're in Denver. Let's talk about the mountains, right? Those climbing walls. So I get on a wall. I climb all the way up. I invite Bailey S. to the wall. Bailey S. is still down at the bottom. Bailey S. can't find the third rung. Bailey S. is going sideways instead of up. And then we both come down. Bailey S. says, dang, that was hard. I look at her and say, no, it wasn't. What'd I just do? And yet we do it all the time. You're probably thinking in your mind, oh crap, I've done that. Don't judge yourself. Just notice it. Because when you notice something, you bring it to the front. It's no longer operating in autopilot. Soon as you notice it, you can bring it to the front and then you can decide, what do I want to do about this? That is the only way that change happens. If we continue to pretend that things are not existing or tiptoeing around conversations, we can't notice them, we can't name them, and then we can't change them, if we so choose. Let me go to this one right here. Here's what I want to share with you. Oh, am I screen sharing? No, right? I got so many windows open. What's happening? Okay. Screen sharing. You can see my, okay, good. All right. So the key learnings that, would be great if you remembered today. The first thing is it can take a lifetime to build trust and only a moment to lose it. It only took one moment, one line of me saying, "What did you do?" It only took one moment of me saying, "This is a lot going on over here. You're doing the most." In that second example. It wasn't until I was terrified and I semi-experienced some of it that I was able to show up for my husband in a way that served him, in a way that validated his experiences and his emotions and who he was. Let me just say that before that day, neither Rob nor Masai had ever seen the inside of a police station, not even for fun. And now their fingerprints are on record. The quickest way to lose trust is invalidating someone's experience. If you want to have a conversation about race with literally anyone, the quickest way to lose trust in that conversation, to send it, how we say, like to send it left, send the conversation, off this side path, is to invalidate someone's experience. And we do it all the time. It is a very scary thing for me as a Black person to be able to say to a community of non-Black people that I've had positive experiences with police officers. Let me also give you this background, which I learned this is like apparently cultural to DC. Did any of you ever have an officer friendly growing up? Nobody knows what I'm talking about? Yeah, you're giving me the crazy eyes. Okay. Officer friendly was in my elementary school in DC. And in fact, there was an officer friendly in every elementary school in DC. And it was just the officer. And so some people say, oh, like an SRO? No, not like an SRO. Officer friendly, it didn't matter what their actual name was. They all had a little badge that said officer friendly. They might be a male, they might be a female, maybe Black, they might be white one year. They're all officer friendly. And their point is to show up in the schools to create a positive relationship with young people and law enforcement. That is their sole purpose. They just show up in the school, they high five the kids, they may sit and have lunch with you. Like they're not there to protect you per se. They're there to hang out and to just get to know you. Does that make sense? And so I grew up with officer friendly. All right. And then when I started driving, what would happen when I got pulled over? I'm going to tell you one story. I'm going to keep it real short because last time I got off tangent, we ended a little bit late. But this story was, I was going to pick up my girlfriend. I think I had just turned 20. I was not yet 21, you all. And we had just gone to the liquor store to buy a whole bunch of liquor and alcohol and stuff because the girlfriend in the car was 26, I think. So she bought it all. Well, I was driving. And so we're in the car with all these open bottles of liquor drinking as we're heading downtown to the club. And I legit ran a red light. I just didn't see it. The whole car panicked. They were like, yeah, I see that light. I was like, what light? Boop, boop, boop. The police are behind me. So I definitely did run the light in this case. And I get pulled over. The officer comes. He ends up asking me for my phone number. That's my experience with police. Now, the next time that Rachel gets pulled over and says that she has a crap experience, am I going to tell her, oh, well, she wasn't dressed right. That's why. It sounds ridiculous, right? And yet we do that. We take that lens through which we see the world and we put it on everyone else. How about this one? Children need to know what they feel is okay and that what they feel is separate from their actions and behaviors. Think about it like this. Have you ever been in a situation where two young people were fighting, like physically fighting? Who's had that experience? Been in a situation where you've seen it or been around it? I need to see you visually because I can't tell. Okay, yes. Okay, so everybody. So you're in the situation, the young people are fighting. Thanks, Wade. And they get separated. And what is normally the first thing that the adults will say? I've been around it so much in schools. I do a lot of work in schools and I accidentally see a lot of stuff. The first thing is we don't put hands on each other. What's the rule? That's not how we do it. And I'm going to tell you the effectiveness of that is 0. If a young person is experiencing a high level of emotion, first, we have to validate the emotion. Then we deal with the action and behavior. I'm not saying don't separate the kids. Of course you separate children that are fighting. But the first and most important thing is not the action or the behavior that you saw. It's the feelings that were behind it. What if we saw the whole world through the lens of emotions? What if I didn't see, the protester, or let me not say protester, the rioter who is, busting out a window, because that's different than a protester. Okay. What if I didn't see the busted out window and judge that? What if I went straight to the emotion that's behind it and why it's there? Can you imagine if every single rioter was able to express their emotions and feel validated and heard? Oh my goodness. You can give them that gift. And I'm going to show you how. Having conversations around race, it's not like, a lot of people come to me and they're like, what do I do? What do I do? Thanks, Michelle. That would be powerful, right? If we could give children this gift of them knowing that what they do is not who they are, and helping them to separate that. One way to have these conversations successfully and productively in literally any environment is to validate the person's experience. That is how you talk about race. There is no box to check. There's no list of to-dos that I'm going to give you. How do I walk into this as whatever your identity is? It is the same. It is the same for you as it is for me. Now, as you're listening, there may be less that you can relate to. You see what I'm saying? That's the difference, maybe, in certain communities. If you're not of that community, as you're hearing the experience, you may not be able to personally relate necessarily with what's being said. You don't have to relate to what's being said to validate the person, to make a person feel seen and heard. I'm going to show you how to do that. The first thing is identify the emotion. Now, this is a little blurry. Well, it's because it's a lot of words. And so Megan is actually going to, if you're interested, send out this feelings wheel for you, because one of the things that young people have, and actually I used to say young people have that adults don't have, but I'm finding the more coaching I do that adults also have this issue, which is we don't know enough feelings words. What's the standard answer? Type it into the chat. How are you doing? Type your answer into the chat. Good, bad, okay. Those are the feelings. And we walk away from people thinking that we got an answer. None of those words are feelings. We just have a really limited vocabulary when it comes around our feelings. I mean, think about it. When's the last time you used the word perplexed? Look at this slide. When's the last time you described yourself as feeling unfocused? And we can give our kids the gift of that. Which word on this wheel applies to you? So how you use the wheel is you stay out of the center. You use either the second ring or the external ring, but have them stay out of the center. You use the center for your guide. Does that make sense? So if you want to use this and incorporate it, I'm going to demonstrate how you would do that right now. Is there a volunteer that I can get really quickly? All you have to do is talk.
Yeah, I can volunteer.
Okay, thanks, Jake. So I want you to tell me about a time, maybe this week, that you felt either sad, frustrated, angry, something that's not necessarily happy. Could be almost anything else but happy.
Sure. I can actually tell you about a time this morning. We're doing drop off this morning, and excuse me, our director's going out to the parking lot to pick up a couple kids. Two of them are siblings, and one of them is just another kid. And the two siblings, one of them turned to the mom, and he's like 5 or 6. He's pretty young. Turned to the mom and gave her the middle finger, which when you're 5 or 6, you don't know what that means. But the mom, I guess, started screaming at the kid. And then the other parent that was there dropping off the other kid started getting involved, trying to like, do you need help with this? Like, what do I need to do? Whatever. And then the little kid like got really scared because this other parent like started yelling at him as well. And he like ran off. Luckily it was pretty easily taken care of and we got it all figured out. But that was definitely it was frustration with both parents for how they reacted. It was a lot of annoyance at the second parent for getting involved in something that wasn't his responsibility. It wasn't something that he needed to be worrying about. And so it was, it was a lot of, I'm trying to look at the wheel and find a good, a good word, but it was, there was some, it was a disappointing reaction from the mom. But it also took a lot of like understanding on our part, understanding that they had just moved like very recently. This family.
Wait, this all happened this morning?
Huh?
This all happened this morning?
Yeah.
Oh, Jake, thanks for being here.
Yeah, right. No, like I said, it was handled pretty quickly, and things were taken care of. And luckily, our principal is really great and supportive. And she actually called the second parent to explain to him, like, hey, if you ever see something like this in the parking lot, like, unless it gets like violent, don't.
Right. Here's what you do. Right.
Don't get involved. Like, your kid got dropped off. He's safe and fine. Worry about your own kid. Don't worry about anybody else's kid.
So let me ask you a question.
Yeah.
Actually, let me just make sure I'm understanding you.
Sure.
So it sounds like to me, well, first of all, it makes complete sense that you would be frustrated because now you've got this child whom you're there to serve and take care of and protect. Mm-hmm. You can see what's going on, and there's a lot of overreactions from parents. Clearly, being annoyed is an appropriate response in that situation. And then also just the disappointment of watching these parents who are supposed to be leaders in the household have poor responses that don't support what you're trying to accomplish. How accurate is that?
Yeah, that sounds right. And it's also, it's a tough situation to handle too, because, these kids had just moved like 2 or 3 weeks ago from Nebraska to Colorado. And so they're going through, they're confused about what's going on. I think they were previously homeschooled. And so it was a lot of, this whole school experience for them is like brand new. And so just trying to understand where they're coming from. Unfortunately, we weren't able to talk with the kid a whole lot this morning because they came like right as we were supposed to take them into class. So we're going to talk with them this afternoon about kind of what happened.
Well, the fact that you all are even following up is, listen, I work with organizations that have lists of things that haven't even been followed up on. So kudos to you. Great job there. How did you feel when you told your story and I responded to you? How did I make you feel about the story you told me?
That's a great question. Sometimes when I tell people what happens in childcare, because I've done this for a while now, they're like, that didn't really happen. No little 6-year-old is going to flip off his mom in the parking lot when he's getting dropped off in the morning. But like stuff like this happens all the time. Like that's just, it's the nature of the job that we work in. And so, I actually felt like you believed me, which was nice. Yeah, I guess that's kind of the best way I can put it.
That's plenty. So, I mean, think about all the stories that I told you all earlier. Can you imagine if the receiving person just felt believed? Any piece, pick any person in the story at any time. And imagine if that person just felt believed. Sometimes that's all we need. What I just modeled with the conversation with Jake was validation. So I'm telling you, validation is so important. And now I'm telling you how to do it. So this might be a slide you want to take a picture of because here's just some language. Here's the thing. It's understandable. I think I said it totally makes sense. Something like that, right? Of course you feel. You have to know the emotion to validate it. Thankfully, Jake gave it to me. But a lot of times people get caught up in the story and they don't tell how they feel. So it's okay to ask, how did that make you feel? Well, it made me feel really angry. Well, of course you feel angry. You see what I'm saying? What we like to do instead is assume that we know what the person feels and plug that emotion in because we didn't hear it. Sometimes we're right. And here's the moneymaker. Don't ever say, I understand. If you walk away with nothing else today, you don't understand. Even if you had a similar experience on the same day, in the same place, at the same time, your interpretation and experience of whatever happened is not going to be identical to someone else because you have two different lived experiences. And saying, I understand, who does that make it about? Me. Now you've shifted it to you. And we do this all the time, unintentionally, right? Thinking that I understand is the right thing to say. And it rarely is. It can be very minimizing for someone else. And so I'm going to invite you to just throw that away and never, ever use it. Unless someone's asking you, like, if you understood a translation. That's when it would be appropriate. All right. So that wraps up really where I'm taking you to today. And I could have just told you this slide in the very beginning, and it wouldn't have been nearly as effective because we all have our own process that we go through. We all have our own way to relate to subject matter, content, conversations. And so my hope is that you were able to see yourself, find yourself, or relate to something that was expressed in any of the stories and conversations that happened today, and that now you feel empowered to just go ahead and try. My challenge to you, try this. Try it today. Try it on a spouse. Try it on a friend. Try it on a young person, and just see what happens. The more you try it out, the better you get. All right. Last thing, just type into the chat because we're at our time. What's your number one takeaway from our conversation today? Just type it into the chat. What your takeaway from our conversation today is. Oops, I don't have mine open. There we go. I understand sounds like an empathetic response, but it shifts the spotlight of feelings. Absolutely. See, I can't do. Oh, and Megan just put the survey into the chat. If you wouldn't mind giving me some feedback, I would love to hear from you. And anyways, this is kind of our first time doing this. And so this would be great to learn what you're looking for and what you would like for the future. And it's anonymous. So tell your truth. Jake, yes, she typically does send out the feelings wheel with the recap for today. So you're going to get that. Do not say I understand. Great. So Daniela did the takeaway. What other takeaways do we have? We should have 8 takeaways. Just curious as to what landed with you. That's all the takeaway is. Whatever you're holding on to. What hit you? What hit and stick? I understand all the time when talking to kids, thinking it helps me get on the same level as the kids. You know what, Jake? That takes a lot of courage to be able to just say and admit. And now that you've noticed it, now you're going to hear it all the time. Like once you turn that thing on, you can't unsee it. And so I bet that's going to get tweaked. And I'm hoping that you're going to see some positive shifts in your relationships with your young people because of it. Perception is an incredible mind bender. I'm just going to read like a few more. What you do is not who you are. Absolutely. Remember to validate. Don't try to be the expert in anyone else's experience. Yes, Bailey. What you do is not who you are. Yes. All right. Thank you so much. It was really nice spending some time with you. And I know the work that you're doing is really important. And so your time is so precious. So I just want you to know that I don't take that lightly. And I hope that you found this time valuable. I really appreciate all your insights and all your pushes and challenges. And my hope is that you go out and let me know how great it's going for you or that you tried something. She's also going to put my contact info in the email. Please don't hesitate if you ever want to follow up or reach out or ask a question to reach out to me anytime. All right. Anything else, Megan?
No, that's it. Thank you so much, Lana. This is wonderful. I'll just put this last slide up, and there's my email if you want to reach me. And I'll send out the information for the upcoming trauma-informed care training. Thanks, everybody. Have a really nice day.